So a few years ago, I used to go back to my hometown about once a month every year. And during this time, I would meet a friend, and we'd always have really good discussions. Now, the discussions were very philosophical. And at this time, he was the only person I could really talk to about these topics. So, I'd have all year kind of building up things I want to talk about. And so this one year, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, so we meet and we start talking, and I'm taking everything that we're saying and I'm just taking it down to the essence of everything is one or there's nothing. And he's like, okay, and go to the next topic. And I do it again. It's like, bring it down. It's all one. It's okay. And finally, he says, okay, I understand that, but if we're going to have a conversation, well, we go down to everything is one. There's nothing to say. So let's have a conversation. So it took me a while to kind of, okay, kind of let go. And finally, we had a nice conversation. And I think the rest of the time there, we just talked about music and movies. So this was the first time I really came face to face with the idea of level of magnification. Now, I'd heard about this before with Alan Watts. And so he talked about, I think, a newspaper photo where, you see the photo and it's a photo. You can see the photo of a person. But as you go closer, it's just all these dots. Now, and we see all this kind of random, disorder. Now, what is it? Is it the order of the picture, or is it the disorder of the dots? And also, he talked about kind of like weavings or tapestries, where you look, if you're really down microscopic, you might see, all the threads, and it just looks completely disordered. But you pull back and it's this beautiful tapestry. So this kind of gives an example of when I'm talking about a level of magnification. Now, for these levels of magnification, I think there are 3 scales that we can talk about. Now, the first one is space. And this one is, like the examples that Alan Watts gave. These are ones that are clear to see. Thinking about a microscope or a telescope. Another example might be a piece of paper. I cut a piece of paper because I need like a square. Now, it looks really nice and straight, but if I looked at it, under a microscope, I might see the edge is jagged. So is it straight or is it jagged? Another one is think about pulling back, where I can be focused on the person or the family or the community or the city or the country or the planet. So the next scale is time. I think this is best explained by the idea of cause and effect. So we have an effect. The glass drops. And what's the cause? We could say, I caused it, I hit it with my elbow. Okay, but I hit it with an elbow because someone put it on the edge of the counter. Because that's that person's fault. Okay, but that person did it because someone else drank their cup, so they had to use this one, and there wasn't space there. And we can keep going on. How about, when does a war start? Does it start when one country invades another? Does it start when war is declared? Does it start when the idea of the invasion starts? Or does it start from the thing that causes the idea of the invasion? Again, you can keep going. Another scale is concept. And so we can look at it some different ways. One is just by definition, so a definition of words. So we can have a very strict definition or very open. Now, a word like success, for some people, it's very strict. It's this amount of money in this amount of time. For other people, it could be just, a good day, a happy day. It was sunny today. It was nice. Okay. So again, what is it? Which one is it? Another one is, when we talk about concepts, is opposites. And so we see already with the Alan Watts example, order and disorder. We can see it with selfish and selfless. We think it's very clear. You can think, okay, this is very selfish, that's selfless. But we can think of examples where, like, I think about a person on an airplane. You have that little card instruction that says what to do when the oxygen mask falls down. For a parent, you put it on yourself first. Now, if you just took that little frame and you see that parent, the kid's right there, and the parent's putting on the mask, you go, oh, that's selfish. But of course, it's not in that situation, because they have to put it on so if they don't pass out, so they can still help their child. So what about some other example? Again, we think exercise. More is better. A little exercise is good. More exercise is better. Okay, but too much is bad. All right, so with all of these, maybe I'm giving examples of balance. So balance is good. Okay, but can you think of examples where sometimes it's nice to have an imbalance? Well, think about going out with friends and drinking too much, eating too much. Or, a holiday, you're eating too much. Is that okay? Now also, when we talk about balance, what is the time frame? Are we saying a balanced day? Or a balanced week? What if I'm good all week, but maybe Saturday night I eat kind of junk food night? Is that okay? What about by month, by year, by lifetime? What if when I was younger I partied all the time, drank too much, but as I'm older I don't, so I have a balanced life? And so we can start to see there's combinations. So these different scales go together. So an example of like time and good and bad. So, the best example is Alan Watts talking about the Chinese farmer, which you can find on YouTube very easy. If you haven't listened to that, I recommend it. But for myself, I think about my high school life. Okay, was it good or was it bad? Well, when I was in high school, it was bad. But now I look at it and go, well, again, those bad times helped me to become, who I am. Was it good? Was it bad? You want to say, well, you could say, well, it's good at that time or it's bad at that time. That's the true. But maybe it's the effect is better. So again, what's the correct answer? So we can also have not only multiple concepts, but multiple sets of time. Where, for example, let's say you and I are having a discussion and we agree something good and bad. And I'm focusing on this thing, and you're focusing on this. Okay, maybe already it's this one's more now. You're focusing on something before. Now I can also be focused space. Maybe I'm focusing on the individual. You're focusing more on the community. But then we can also put another level or layer of time and say I'm focusing on now, but you're focusing on the future effects. And you can go on with different concepts, different ideas of scale, of space, of time. Why am I talking about this? Well, there are problems that come about when we don't understand level of magnification. So the first one I saw with my friend, just communication. We're having a good conversation. I'm not trying to debate him, but we're talking like this. And so we can't have a good discussion. Now, even if we have a disagreement, and so we're having a debate, but let's say an honest, fair debate. I think this, you think this, but if we're on a different level, again, we can't even understand each other. We can't even get to the point of what we're talking about. We're already lost before we began. Another problem I see is using level as a tactic to diminish the other person's opinion. This is going bigger or higher or going smaller. You see this a lot with kind of scientists or materialists, where you'll say something, maybe I'm talking about love, and you say, oh, it's just going down. It's just chemicals in the brain. Or, love of a family, a parent of a child is just the percentage of DNA that they share. And so the lower percentage, less love. Or I can go devalue my opinion by going higher and saying it's insignificant. I'm just this primate on a piece of dirt on a planet in a galaxy, and I even call myself a primate, calling myself a piece of, I can use words also in a different way to devalue that. Another problem we see is with illness, where someone has some problem, some organ they have some problem with, and they're just focusing on that. So you have a problem with the liver. Okay, just focus on the liver. Even though the person has a terrible lifestyle, is eating terrible food, never exercises, doesn't get enough sleep, has a lot of stress. But we can go the other way. Someone breaks their arm, and you're trying to, you're talking to them about their childhood and see if they have any trauma. Okay. Again, we're seeing that's not what we see is it's not the right time or place. We can just see this again with conversations where, another example, talking about not the right time and place. You're at a Thanksgiving dinner and your grandma asks about the turkey or passes you the turkey, and you start talking to her or yelling at her about the evils of industrial farming. Now, again, what you're saying is true, could be true, but not the right time or place. Kind of interesting one with the different levels is when talking about spirituality, or especially spiritual inquiry. Now, naturally, you're going down. Okay, so just the idea of questioning, who am I? You're going down. And no, it's just the idea of always just taking everything down. Again, we see, is that always right? And we can see examples of this with non-duality talk. Where maybe I ask my friend, can you buy me some eggs? And he's like, oh, there is no you or I. There's only awareness. Yeah, okay, but I'm making cookies later. He's like, there is no later. There's only the eternal now. Okay, but I need eggs because I want to make cookies. All desires arise from the feeling of the ego and thus lead to the searching of wholeness outside of oneself. Okay, but I just want to eat a cookie. Right? Now, with all this, I'm not saying that you shouldn't delve down. I mean, that's what I do, of course. It's just understanding the levels, and sometimes maybe talking at this level. Now, you also see this with spiritual leaders. This one saying that this one is not enlightened. I'm enlightened, but this person is not. This is true enlightenment. This is not true enlightenment. Okay. Now, what is really interesting is, and I recommend the book The Finders by Dr. Jeffrey Martin. So he talks about enlightened people. So he's studied people for many years, these enlightened people. He's got different names, people in persistent, fundamental well-being. But what he found is there's different locations, and he called them locations because he didn't want to say levels, to think one is better than the other. And another thing is he now also has layers, okay, with each of those locations. And so you can look at a spiritual teacher and go, okay, this person is talking in this location, this person is talking in this location. Okay, but again, is one of them truer? Is one of them more enlightened? So, well, I think a big problem these days, or maybe one of the biggest, is we see this kind of bleeding into this idea of reductionism, bleeding into society, and postmodernism, where you're taking again philosophy and it's going into society. Now, like I was talking about with the conversation with my friend and buying eggs. When I want him to buy eggs, I just want him to buy eggs. But if you want to later want to sit down and have a philosophical talk about there is no I, or there's no no eggs, or okay, that's fine. But the problem is when it goes into everything, we start losing meaning. I mean, just like words lose meaning. A good example of words losing meaning, what I always think about is, I think Jerry Seinfeld talked about this in one of his bits about teams and athletes, and how, this athlete's on your team, you love him. He goes to this team, I hate him. He's like, you're not rooting for the players, you're just rooting for the uniforms or the clothing. But it's even more than that. You could take it apart and go, okay, what is the team? Is it the players? No, because they change all the time. The coaches? No. The owners? No, they change. How about the location? The stadium? No, you can get a new stadium. You can change the city. Okay, so not city. How about, is it the name? You can change names. Uniform? Change uniform. Change the colors. So what's left? Nothing. Okay, so what do you do? With everything I'm saying, what do you do? Do you just, for this example, just say, okay, I'm done with sports. I'm not going to watch the team anymore. You can. Now, the beauty with understanding the levels of magnification is that you can move. You can move up or down with them. So if I want to just pull back and say, okay, I'm not doing sports anymore. Okay. Or I can go into it and say, well, I'll watch the games, but they win, I don't care. They lose, I don't care. Or I can go all in. And so now when they win, man, it feels great. But with that, I have to take that pain of the loss. But maybe that's what I want to do. And maybe, I'll just do it. I do it for this season, and then I pull back again, and then, maybe, or one game. Okay. But that's what you can do if you see these different levels, these different scales. So maybe that is the last scale, is perspective. The ability to see it big and sometimes, again, go into it and feel what that feels like. Feel that, the high, feel the low, and also come back. So that will be it for today. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. Until next time.